kind of how, are you from Manchester? No. So we've got two people making a narrative about something with the guiding force of Christco. So how did it work? How did the story come about?
Okay, so firstly I'd like to say I'm merely stepping in for Javi here. I mean, he's absolutely gutted he couldn't be here. He's a TV director and we had to do a live show today, so he couldn't be in London. He's really, really sad he's not here to see his film up in lights. And I think I said that because really this project started very, very small. It was like an acorn. He was in Manchester for 3 years on a contract working there, and wanted something to do in his spare time. Basically, he was away from his wife, who's sat next to me here.
Bianca Sands.
And he's a dance music nut, so he absolutely loves his dance music. We work together at Manchester City Football Club. We like football, but we love we love music more. It started as basically a pet project, and it snowballed massively. And I could probably give you kind of two milestones why it snowballed. And the first one was when we were introduced to Matthew, sat there.
Matthew Christco, right?
So Matthew has obviously been DJing in Manchester for 18 years. He's been resident at the two biggest nights, Sankey Soaps and then the Warehouse Project. Obviously that came with a lot of connections for us, and then a lot of doors opened once we met Matthew, but also it kind of gave us an idea, how we could start to piece together the film, and he gave us a kind of strand of how a DJ in Manchester would go about his kind of daily life, and that for us was really interesting because we didn't want to. There's a really well-trodden path with Manchester and films and books, and actually we didn't want to kind of do that. We didn't want to do another Hacienda movie, another Hacienda book, whilst those things have got a lot of merit. We wanted to do something different, and then the second milestone, which I'll come on to, is now when we introduced to Greg through Matthew, and Greg really encouraged us to dig deeper than just the Hacienda, and like you were saying with the whole argument about acid house, and the Foot Patrol footage you saw there from Hume. That was 18 months, 2 years before the Summer of Love. Things are going on in London, so this was a really this really kind of gave Javi a real inspiration when he saw that footage, because that was when we thought actually there was something much deeper going on in Manchester before the Hacienda, and people like Greg, obviously at the Legend Club, Hugh and Clark, Stu Allen. So that's where it was. That's where it all started, and it snowballed from probably Javi thinking he was just going to do a 20-minute episode into a feature-length documentary showing in Dalston in London. It's been a crazy 3 years.
Brilliant. Good job, everybody, though, right? Good roll call. I mean, really, great to get everybody in there. And it's kind of interesting, I felt, kind of getting the whole Seth Trotzler and contemporisation of the culture as well. Kind of nice just not to have the old stuff. Right, may I have that microphone back then? So where should we start? Shall we start with going along, just saying your relationship with Manchester? We have to be really speedy because we started the film late and there's other films that have to play here. So, right.
Manchester to me was it's somewhere that I came to in '81. I worked at a club called Wigan Pier, and the owners of that club opened a club in Manchester called Legend, and that's what brought me into the city DJing. It's kind of, from my perspective, a lot of people associate me with the city, think I'm from there, whereas I'm actually from Merseyside, but there's more of a spiritual connection with Manchester that Manchester's always kind of got what I'm doing, right down the line. It always, I think it's a very progressive city. I love Liverpool as well, but Liverpool's like a sentimental place. It's the place where people used to leave and never return, where they used to sail off to America. So there's a lot of sentimentality within that, whereas Manchester's very progressive. It's always kind of looking ahead, looking for the next thing. And I think that kind of chimed with what I was about, and I was like fortunate to find myself there at what was the high point for me in my DJ career.
I really like the way that Mike Pickering was saying as well, that kind of punk attitude as well, a bit like No Future, and we're starting it now, I quite like that. And I was kind of like, Acid House for me was year zero, so like, yeah, I don't know if you want to build on
not really that miserable.
Not really that grey either.
It's funny because in Manchester, we did like a private screening, and that I didn't even notice that because everyone laughed at the miserable bit. Not one laugh. It was like not in Manchester. I came to. I'm from Leeds originally. I first got into all this with a mixtape when I was about 11 years old in '91, like a Stu Allen mixtape, I think it was. I used to get the train out, used to tell my friends, used to tell my mum I was staying at my mate's. My mate would say he was staying at mine, we'd get the train to Dattian and just stand outside, and then get the train back to Leeds and go home. And then just by circumstance and randomness, I came to Manchester in like late 90s and got a residency at the Sankey Soap in its second incarnation when it reopened in 2000. And that's just gone from there, like the guys that I started with right at the beginning, Sam and Sasha, who then when we left after 6 years and started the Wales Project like 13 or so years ago. So it's like even for me, I mean, let's speak about, getting the train over from Leeds. I mean, even just, these are the guys' names that I see on flyers when even though I'm 17 years into it now, I mean, these are the ones that I saw on flyers when I was a kid, so it's kind of, but when it sucks you in, you get to the city, then, that's it. I've lived in Manchester longer than I lived in Yorkshire, and it's, it's just, once you take, oh thanks, cheers Mike. Yeah, and it gets under your skin, and that's it, you've just so many friends from all over the country that came with the unit and have not left, and it just sucks people in, and even when people do leave, they have this kind of, this long-lasting, it's part of them.
I mean, Justin, you're not actually from Manchester either, are you? So
no, I've a quite common trajectory. I went to study, not that everyone goes to study philosophy at Manchester University, but that's why I went as a student. And I stayed in 1986, I went up there.
You can tell as well,
as a kind of furrow-browed, long Mac-wearing fan of Joy Division. And
I heard you had to wear a Mac in Hacienda because it was so cold, right? And they didn't have any heating on there, so it wasn't until Ecstasy came along that it got warm.
I remember actually going into Nude Night with Mike and Martin Prendergast and hearing, I think it was Rhythm the Dance, I can't remember now, but just hearing that music in there as a kind of, a kid who's more into sort of indie music at that time, and just it changed my, it changed my life really, listening to hearing that music, and I kind of, I just decided to stay up there, worked in Eastern Bloc. And I started working a record shop in Eastern Bloc Records, which along with Spinning was one of the kind of main outlets for music, so I kind of blagged my way into DJing, blagged my way into the studio. Actually, one of the first gigs I ever did was with you, and I had no idea what I was doing at all. I remember the first gig. It was what's the club underneath the Corn Exchange, and I had no idea what I was doing at all.
Conspiracy.
What became Conspiracy? Before it was Conspiracy, but I didn't know what I was doing, and I sort of worked it out after a while. And I stayed there for 16 years.
Do you feel like a bit of an imposter?
What?
Got over that?
In what way? No, because Manchester, the thing that makes Manchester, for me, a vital place is that it's an international city. It's people from all over the world. It's not insular at all. So that's what keeps it so exciting. It kind of absorbs influences and makes them their own. That's the reason why I stayed. It's not an insular place at all.
Because it has a quite, it's like Ibiza in a lot of ways. It's so well branded, isn't it? It's kind of so it allows so much to happen underneath that.
Yes, I've got a lot of my
Yeah. Anyway, before getting too philosophical, right?
Yes.
Should we move it along
Yes.
to Mike because time.
Well, I'm the only Mancunian. Fucking great. And a City fan. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's a very good point that. The Hacienda and Factory before it sort of My first big thing was not dance music. That's not what blew my mind. What blew my mind was in 1977 punk music. So I'm slightly older than my compatriots here. But and that blew my mind. And Manchester, I think, retained that punk attitude and still retains it to this day.
So was there a kind of consciousness in designing a movement in a way with electronic music?
Yeah, well, I think electronic music was like punk music. I mean, the thing about punk music, you're like, wow, I can get a guitar and learn 3 chords. I don't have to be like, go to music school or anything. And acid house was, you could get a 808 drum machine, a 303 bass line and put that down. You know, you could do that in your bedroom or in your garage or whatever. And, you know, it's the same thing. Hacienda, when we built it, it was like, the mantra we had was like, well, we're building it because we've got nowhere to go. So we'll do this.
Well, yeah, one must build one's hacienda, right?
Yeah,
So,
hacienda must be built. But, I mean, it's the same, you know, Greg was saying, when I used to go to Legends, there was only him doing that. It wasn't like he'd seen someone else doing it. So that to me is punk. Because you're doing exactly what you want to do. You're putting your taste on the line. And if people like it, it's fantastic. And if people don't like it, then you go back to your day job. If you've got one.
Well, yeah. So.
See, I'm not that miserable, am I?
No, good answer. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, what you were saying as well, like, you know, we don't have so many divisions now. We don't have such kind of gay clubs, straight clubs. No. Kind of, it's not the same. We don't have black clubs in the same way as much now, I don't think.
Mansions was great. And Antwerp Mansions was a great piece there because at Pure Manchester, just everyone goes down there. And it's grimy falling down house. You know, it's great.
I mean, going back, what made Manchester special in the 80s, and again, you know, in comparison with Liverpool, Liverpool was struggling with racism at the time. It was after the riots in 81, and a group of black kids couldn't get into a city centre club. It was really tragic there, and it had big effects for a long time, culturally and musically within the city. It took Liverpool until Cream in the 90s really to kind of catch up with the rave era. Manchester was cosmopolitan. Manchester had this beautiful situation that the students and the black community were all mixing together within places like Hume, and all these ideas were being transferred, and people like a guy called Gerald, you know, coming into the Hacienda with his, you know, crew of dancers and Foot Patrol, all these people, and all this was part of this crossover. And I think what you, Rob Gretton and Tony and all these people did, you had this kind of crazy dream that you could bring all these people. And to be perfectly honest, at the time that I was there, it was pie in the sky. There were too many separations between scenes. But what I respect about the Hacienda was that they kept with it. They had this belief and they stayed with it. And eventually it happened in exactly the way, well, I mean, more than the way they would have hoped for. You know, it just blew up a few years down.
You know, it's
true actually, because even
you know,
with Factory, with like my band Quando Quango, when we went on tour, we took Foot Patrol and you DJ'd, if you remember. We went all over. So Broken Glass, sorry mate. So there's the Broken Glass crew, and you know, it was just a fusion of all the different, you know, scenes in Manchester. We're like, oh, we'll all go on, you know, we'll play, you dance, you play the records, and that's how it was.
This thing about the super club, with you kind of accidentally designing a super club, with the delegalization of raving and kind of raves, basically, you know, you'd kind of put that in the foreground, I guess. So, do you think that if it hadn't been legalised, the gangster element that kind of killed it?
Before my time.
Yeah, but I was just...
Well, you know, when we had the Hacienda, I mean, the police hated us, and they gave us a very hard time, and, you know, they weren't easy on us at all. I mean, now, with, like, the warehouse projects, it's wonderful the way the police in Manchester and the authorities work with, you know, with the clubs and the warehouse projects. They just wanted to shut us down all the time. We got no leeway off the police. They couldn't wait for the gangsters to get in our club to shut it down.
I mean, it was all pretty corrupt Manchester police force at that time.
Very,
as well, wasn't it?
well, we had God's cop, James Anderton, who thought we should all be shot at the stake.
I think they thought that people in the club and the people causing trouble at the club were the same thing. They just didn't differentiate. We had I used to run a club called Most Excellent. We had quite a lot of interesting nights there, including someone driving a car through the front door. Yeah. And the police's reaction was to throw us all out. So, yeah.
Anyway, listen, I just want to open it up because we are on time. Should we open it up to you lot? There should be a microphone roaming around. Yeah? Okay, so has anyone got any burning questions? One at the front down here, thanks. It's great to see some friends in the audience as well, by the way.
Hi, I was just interested in the film, you all discussed the kind of the whitewashing of the electronic music scene. I just wanted to know your opinions on what you think the scene lost after that and what you think the effect has had that loss has been today. So how the demographic change of like electronic music consumption in the UK what that loss has kind of brought on.
I mean, Mike said something really interesting. I don't know where you wrote it. It might have been in Tim Lawrence's Sleeve Notes of the Hacienda, but a lot of people are mistaken again with the Hacienda's trajectory, assuming it all blew up in '88. But you had a strong night from '86, didn't you? That Friday night was... Yeah, that was a really strong night. It had a lot of black representation, a lot of the dancers in the... 70% black. There you go, 70% black. That changed by the time the whole rave thing took off. And I personally think there were two main reasons for the change. Number one, at that time, black people weren't into chemicals. They were strictly herbal, most people. So ecstasy took a while to kind of filter into the black community. The second one was a simpler one. When it got packed, the Hacienda, there was no floor space to dance. So everyone, that's that kind of sardines hand in the air. Whereas the Black Kids and Foot Patrol, who were the original kind of dancers to house music from a northern perspective, they were using like jazz fusion styles and, needing floor space. So once it all packed out, there wasn't the place for them to go from there. You kind of lost that. But you said yourself that you felt that period, 86 to 88, just before it exploded, was a really special time because of what you had.
Yeah, it was. And that night, I mean, there was, like you say, Foot Patrol, Broken Glass. There was lots of different crews, weren't there? And they used to do the most fantastic dancing in front of it. But we played everything from electro, the beginnings of house, New York kind of house, Dar Braxton, Arthur Baker. Then we'd even play like English electro, European. Simon Topping did a 20-minute, 25-minute salsa and Latin break. There was all Northern Soul. What Ecstasy did was it changed it all to a single beat, and it was wonderful. But it took away a lot of the creativity, to be honest.
Because the music didn't... I mean, I remember 1986 was when I first started going to Hacienda, and the energy was the same, but the music was the same, but the drugs changed the arm waving. And like you say, there was...
The music changed because the variety of music disappeared.
Yeah, I remember...
We seem to have gone full circle back to nowadays where, electronic music takes on all these, like say, you mentioned before, Fortet, and you can make thousands of producers. That is dance music now that just has all these influences of all these different types of music. So it's it went from all these things into a linear thing, back and then straight back into, you can play anything in the club now. Whereas Project, you can play, kind of O'Neill, just disco at 2 a.m, straight after, Jeff Mills or something like that. It's not, no one even blinks an eyelid now. It's kind of an amalgamation of lots of things.
Yeah, which is what Seth was talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to do a club called Conspiracy as well, which is in Manchester. That was quite a fairly mixed crowd for that. It wasn't... There's lots of other things going on around the Hacienda, and different nights, trash parties, and there's lots of different venues going on. With the crowd was quite different in those places as well. So,
Does that answer?
Yeah.
Have we got any more questions?
Hello? Yeah, okay. You sort of touched on this, but you're all DJs of a certain vintage. Is there one particular year which stands out that's been particularly good? Or can we go through the panel and is there one particular night which stands out from all the years you've DJed?
That's probably the hardest question you could ask a DJ, isn't it? One night in heaven. I would say any for me any night in the first summer of love was just very special because no one outside of the club knew what was happening. We were like a secret society. So when we were all driving off at 2 o'clock to some barn in the middle of a field or some warehouse or to carry on the party, no one had a clue what we were doing, and that was a wonderful. It's like secret society. It was a wonderful feeling for that year.
I can't pick out one particular event. It's all been marvellous. But yeah, it's hard. I mean, I used to run my own club. That was quite fun. There's like Chemical Brothers waving tambourines in the audience. I think that's probably up there somewhere. But it continues to excite me. It really continues to. I mean, the best nights. I had a brilliant night there in Manchester just the other week actually. So.
In Manchester?
I don't even know where it was. It was in the basement because what we used to be.
That's the kind of night we like, isn't it?
We used to be a restaurant, and it's not a restaurant anymore. It's I don't know what it was. It was in the basement of this thing, like a couple of speakers and a strobe light. It was brilliant. That's my favourite.
Yeah, I mean, just moving what they said, it's like, it's so difficult to pick out one. For me, it's like arriving in the Sankey Soak days, knowing it's what had gone on before, and I think it's the first time I DJ'd there, the first night of my first residency in Manchester, and it was Laurent Garnier doing his Unreasonable Behaviour tour, I think, downstairs, and it was about, when he Sankey's, it was about, I don't know, probably safely about 1,500 people, and there must have been about 2,800 people in there easily, and it was, just remember the man with the red face, and that was it for me. It was just, I want to stay here.
Yeah, I mean, it's simple for me. It's a bit like what Mike said. It's not a specific night. It's a period. It's basically every Wednesday, circa 82, 83 at Legend. I just couldn't wait to get there. The music was absolutely at the cusp, cutting edge stuff coming out of New York. The audience, the best dancers, they were so into it. They knew the score. You know, that the club itself was just incredible, lighting and sound. This new music, electro, that was coming in from New York, fitted perfectly into this environment, and I started to mix, which was kind of novel for a British DJ at the time. And all the factors were in place during that period. I just couldn't wait for Wednesday. I mean, it was beautiful, queues up the road, packed out, and that was right through until I stopped at the end of 83, so that was mine.
Brilliant. My favourite night, if you're interested, was at Sankey Soaks, and there were just all these people setting aerosols on fire, and it was one of the funniest things, like with very low slung ceilings, one of the funniest. I was like, wow, this place is quite good. Like, so we've got time for one more question. Okay, brilliant.
I've got a question for Greg. It's about the tune you made with Broken Glass, Style of the Streets.
Yeah.
What memories do you have of making that, and what memories do you have of playing that out? Because I was into all that scene in Manchester at that time, and I remember the hip hop all day at the Hacienda in '86. But you were doing that way before that. I mean, I remember Broken Glass, but can you tell us about making that record and playing it out?
Yeah, I actually never played it out because I wasn't DJing then. I stopped DJing at the end of '83, and Style of the Street was done in early '84. We recorded the demo, and I actually prefer the demo. It's online somewhere. I prefer it to the final version. And we did that in Knutsford at a studio that was at a train station. It was called The Station, and yeah, you had to stop when the train went past. If you were recording vocals, you had to stop for a minute, and it was just a bit mad. And then we re-recorded it in a studio in Oldham called The Church, I think it was. Yeah, The Church in Oldham. And that's where we recorded the UK electro album. I mean, Kermit and a guy called Fids, Brian Fiddler, they wrote the lyrics with myself, and Martin Jackson and Andy Connell, who were part of that UK Electro project. Martin was from previously the Band Magazine. Andy was in Kalima in a certain ratio. And just... Martin and Andy went on with Careen and became, which was a bit weird. They went for this kind of mad electro experimentation to, something altogether more palatable, I suppose. That track was just basically born out of a situation where we did a load of tracks. Morgan Khan wanted to kind of give us aliases, so it looked like there were about 3 or 4 different groups, and there's this thriving electro scene in the UK, and put it out as part of the electro series on Street Sound. So it was an organic thing, really. It was one of the first things that we'd ever done, certainly on the songwriting side. Very naive and innocent. As I say, I prefer the demo. I think that's got more heart to it. I think we electrified it a little bit too much for the UK electro version. But having said that, loads of people love it that way, and including one of them. So that's the story of Scarlet Street.
Brilliant, excellent. So, just to wrap up, finally, thanks everybody for coming, and just to remind you again, DJ Mag are also presenting Raving in Iran, which is a really, really good film that goes into the morality police kind of putting on raves in Iran. So it's quite a good story, like under the burqa kind of raves. In a big tent, like a burqa, So anyway, that's soon. So check the programme. Huh? 15th, right? Okay, good. So this is Carl from Dock and Roll Festival. He puts this whole thing together with the lovely Vanessa. They're amazing. It's a really good indie film festival, so kind of try to support it as much as you can with tickets, keep on buying tickets. Thanks so much. It's like an honour to be here to talk to you. People have been so encouraging.